What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another video. Today we are checking out Canadian veterans celebrated in the Netherlands. So why do the Canadians celebrate this in the Netherlands? I think that is what this video is about. I'm not really sure anything too much about this celebration, so we'll watch this and hopefully learn. So let's get right onto it, guys. Don't forget, smash this like button, subscribe to the channel, join our Discord community, and let's get on with the video.
The Netherlands in the spring. Beautiful. Flowers in full bloom, parks pristine,
flowers.
streets spotless. It's a far cry from what the same spots were like 70 years ago. The Germans had leveled the cities, murdered those who got in the way, and sent tens of thousands of Jews to be gassed in death camps.
Well, that's just
horrible. The Dutch who were left were starving after the 5 years of brutal Nazi occupation. By 1945, they were so hungry, some were eating tulip bulbs to stay alive.
The starved, rickets-ridden bodies of this Dutch family are witnesses to the treatment the Germans meted out to our friends in Holland.
That's when the Canadians arrived,
Dreaming of a career
twisting their way into towns like this one, Apeldoorn, crushing the Nazis, liberating the people. The Dutch have never forgotten, never. And this week, they'll be in these streets again, by the thousands, to welcome back some of those Canadians, now in their 90s, who gave them their country, their lives back.
So this is an event that happens every year, I guess, to celebrate this day in memory, you know?
I've been coming here for 20 years, never ceasing to be amazed at the Dutch determination to say thank you.
Wow. Just imagine,
The street
guys.
with its pennants and Canadian flags is representative of many streets across the Netherlands right now, as the Dutch mark the major contribution that Canada played in the liberation of their country half a century ago.
I'm very young. I only heard stories from my grandfather and grandmother. But yes, they freed us 50 years ago, so that's why I'm here.
I think it's a love affair between the Canadians and the Dutch.
Well, 60 years is an awfully long time, but not long enough for the Dutch to forget the pain, the loss, the suffering, and the oppression of living under Nazi rule all those years during the Second World War. And not long enough either to forget the liberation and those who brought it to them.
Exactly. You don't forget these days, guys.
I'm feeling liberated.
107,000 people left this place on the trains destined for the death camps of Nazi-occupied Europe. 102,000 of them perished in those camps. On days like this, the Dutch come to remember what happened here more than 65 years ago.
The camp life was dominated by the train. The train was taking away 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 prisoners. And you prayed being not on the list.
Why do they never forget? Just listen to some of the stories we've heard over the years.
And I said,
Yeah, let's listen to some stories and see what people have to
do
say.
you eat that every day? Sure. You want some? I'll give you a whole loaf. A whole loaf of white bread. I ran to the house and I planted it on the breakfast table and I said, here, look at it. Canadians are here.
Wow.
Look at this street sign in an Apeldoorn suburb. If the name looks Canadian, it's because it is. A dozen streets in this neighborhood are named after one of the almost 8,000 Canadians who never came home from the battle. What was it about those young men who, through the generations, the Dutch won't stop thanking? Who were those guys? George Beale was one of them, a major with the 48th Highlanders. Every few days he'd stop and write a letter home to his wife, Ruth, in Toronto. This is one of them. Here's what he said. My own darling, I haven't written you for 5 days. I didn't feel much like it, sweetie, as we were fighting again, and I was awfully busy, and we've been having a tough fight. At the moment, I'm sitting in a city called Apeldoorn, and the Queen's Palace is within 100 yards of me.
Wow.
That's the Queen's Palace, right over there. We're about 100 yards from it. He might have been right here.
Yeah, on the same exact
We entered
spot.
the town proper
Damn.
this morning after a big advance from the Isle River. I'm fine, Ruth, so don't worry, although I'm very tired. The enemy's running like the devil again, and we have to chase him.
The fighting was bloody, and the dying. But through it all, George wrote to Ruth about the love he had for his men.
He wrote this one on Sunday, April 22nd. I have fought and lived with those men for over a year, and to me they seemed as though they were part of my family. They never refused to go any place I ordered, and did everything I asked them to, cheerfully and willingly, knowing most of the time that I might be sending them to their deaths.
Damn, what a letter,
There were
man.
lots of
What a
individual
letter.
Canadian heroes here, Army men like George Beale, but Air Force flyers too.
50 years ago, these fields near Nistelrode in southeastern Holland were home base for a Royal Canadian Air Force Spitfire squadron. One of those Canadian pilots was a 22-year-old chap from Lethbridge, Alberta, whose name was Richard Odette.
Just 22
Well,
years
near the end of
old.
December 1944, Odette had flown more than 50 missions. But up until that point, he had scored no German kills. Well,
Okay.
on the 29th of December, 1944, all that changed. When Richard Odette flew out of one of these fields, he flew right into the history books. Before he returned, he had
What does
shot
that mean?
down
I didn't get that. Fly right into the history books? Like he made history? Is that the meaning behind that?
5
Okay.
German aircraft. No other Canadian pilot, no other British pilot had scored that many victories in one mission.
Wow.
Meanwhile, frontline fighters broke through to capture key strategic locations. All this was happening as the Nazis were facing their final desperate days, until that last moment when the fighting and the dying suddenly stopped. 70 years ago this week, the war ended.
And here's what George Beale wrote to Ruth on that same day. You can feel the emotion in his voice. Darling, you couldn't possibly have any idea just what kind of a reception it has been and still is. The people go simply mad. And I had the honor, darling, of being the leading vehicle, my Jeep. Any town we went through, the people crowded the roads, and we had a most difficult time getting past them. They all want to touch your hand or even kiss you, and they simply pelted us with flowers. My Jeep looked like a florist shop. It does make all the hardships worthwhile when you see the joy of these liberated people.
Oh, this story is just like never heard about this story, and it's actually quite amazing, guys.
For this year's returning heroes, new medals from the local mayor.
Wow, look at all those
Your
medals.
thoughts guide us as we shape our future.
And new thoughts about an old battle.
Well, I was stationed here during the war as a Canadian Women's Army Corps, which I'm very proud of,
Wow.
and it brings back so many memories. And I always have a place in my heart for Holland, for Apeldoorn.
It's a great, great day, you know. For the little thing we did, we get so much, 1,000 times more time.
The Dutch
Everything.
people are so
The Dutch people
faithful
are the
to us.
best people in the world, and I mean it.
Hey, I'm Kate.
So they, oh, the ad. So they have so much respect, guys, for the Dutch, the Canadians. The respect between them is, wow, man.
Wangeningen just down the road from Apeldoorn, in that little building. That's where the Germans finally surrendered. These extraordinary pictures capture the moment.
Okay.
Commander-in-Chief, 21 Army Group. These forces to lay down their arms and to surrender unconditionally.
And there at the table, Canadian General George Kitching, distinguished then and just as distinguished when I chatted with him at the same table 50 years later.
How do
That's
you feel
crazy.
when you come back in this room?
It's almost as if they're ghosts. As if you are the German on the opposite side of the table, Peter.
Wow.
It was full of people then. Any movement, it was a very quiet room. And in spite of the fact that there were 30 Canadian reporters, they were quiet.
The general is gone now, and so are many of the men who fought with him. But the ones who are left, the ones who still come, the ones the Dutch, young and old, still so adore, are here with their memories. The ones that hurt, the ones that leave them quiet, and the ones that somehow make them smile.
I've never felt that I sacrificed anything to be part of a liberating army.
There were so many Canadians who lost their lives here in the Netherlands. How did you handle that on a day-to-day basis?
I put it out of my mind altogether, but nonetheless I cry when I go to the cemetery and see my friends' graves.
That's for sure.
I never learned to cry. You just feel it inside.
What does it mean to you guys to be remembered the way you are here in this country, the way they look at you, the way they react to you?
It's 70 years ago that we were here, but still
70 years ago,
kids
bro.
are
That is
still enthusiastic about what we did here 70 years ago. And I love to see kids the way they greet us and the way they look in such admiration at us, you know.
Really, it was something to feel the happiness, the joy of the liberation.
so like if this was like 70 years ago, and these guys were in the 20s when this actually happened, they're like around 90 years old, correct? Correct me if I'm wrong, because wow, man, that's crazy.
Asked the people I was staying with, what is this touching bit, you know? They asked permission to touch you, and
They
I
asked
couldn't
permission.
get over that. So they want to touch a liberator, and they want their children to touch a liberator.
20 years ago, I asked the then mayor of Apeldoorn why it was that the Dutch never forgot the Canadians. His answer was very simple, very direct.
Correct.
He said, you have to have been occupied to appreciate what freedom really means. And when you do, you never forget who gave it to you.
Of course. That's true.
Why Canada is never forgotten here. Never.
Wow. Quite an amazing story there, guys. Interesting. Really had my head focused on this one. But wow. Let me know, guys, your thoughts on this video in the comments below. Hope you all enjoyed. And yeah, that's it for today's video, guys. Thanks for watching. And we'll see you on the next video, guys. Peace out.